All right, not exactly subtle moving hardware in insurgents, but we'll make the right impression. Get them out to the buyers, no questions asked.
Of the prevailing social visions that unequal outcomes are due to adverse treatment of the less fortunate. The cost of vision, how the welfare state undermines society. What happens when a society plays desert lives out? When it assumes that good intentions alone can solve complex social problems. The answer lies not in abstract theory, but in the hard data of human outcomes. Outcomes that reveal a COVID too. The social vision of 1960, celebrating as the triumph of compassion, unleashed the cascade of unjust that eroded families, crime, and forces the very fabric of Western society. The question is what this policy fails, why we persist in ignoring the evidence of their failure. Let's begin with the simple facts. Reasons are not reality. A vision, no matter how noble it sounds, must be tested against outcomes, not intention. 1960 gave a vision of common deliverance advanced by expanding the welfare state, softening moral judgment, and redefining justice as equal outcomes. But what did it deliver? A resurgence of violence, crime, family breakdown, education decline that has been received for decades. The irony is stark. The very policy of mental health less fortunate often harms that motive. Let's unpack this step by step with the clarity of evidence rather than the law of reality. The family, the foundation, they crumbled. Consider the family the bedrock of these stable societies. In 1960, two-thirds of Black Americans were living with both parents. By 1995, only one-third among Black families in poverty. 85% of children grew up without a father present. This wasn't a slow drift, it was a collapse, and it wasn't unique to Black Americans. In England and Wales, by 2007, 44% of children were born on bread farms. Among White Americans, the proportion of children born on bread farms jumped to nearly 30% by 2008, and among less educated white women, it exceeded 60%. These are not random numbers. They are a pattern, a signal of the deeper unraveling. What caused this? The legacy of slavery. As some claim, hardly. Slavery ended a century home, the welfare state. By making it financially viable for families to function without fathers, welfare policy removed the economic necessity of family well-being. A poor man struggling to support his children might find that his family qualifies for more benefits without him. The system, in effect, penalizes responsibility and rewards abandonment. For the irresponsible man or woman with no price to pay, taxpayers foot the bill. The real cost is borne by the children, raised without the structure and guidance of a two-parent home. This isn't speculation. It's logic grounded in incentives. When you subsidize something, you get more of it. Subsidize fatherlessness, and fatherlessness all the taxpayers of the country fail to decide to harm the children, provide the role models, stability, the intangible benefits of a father's presence. The evidence is clear. The welfare state didn't preserve balance. It dismantled it. The Moynihan warning, ignored and vilified. In 1965, a scholar named Daniel Patrick Moynihan sounded the alarm. His report on the Black family highlighted the growing crisis of fatherlessness and its link to social dysfunction. He wasn't guessing, he was observing. Moynihan knew this issue firsthand. His own father deserted his family when he was 10, leaving him and his brother to shine shoes in Times Square to keep their household afloat. He saw the same pattern among Irish Americans earlier in the 20th century. This wasn't about race, it was about human behavior under perverse incentives. Yet Moynihan was excoriated, criticism of blaming Black families, ignoring the broader point that family breakdown, regardless of race, breeds social chaos. They miss the forest for the trees, as ideologues often do. Moynihan's warning was not an attack, but a plea, a call to confront a problem before it spirals further. Instead, the intellectual elite dismissed it, clinging to their vision of systemic injustice as the sole cause of disparity. The result, the very trend he warned about, accelerated, not just in America, but across the Western world. Social pathology, a reversal was the social vision that reshaped policy and culture. This wasn't just an American phenomenon. In England, long known for its orderly crowds and sportsmanlike behavior, the 1960s marked a turning point. In 1954, London had just 12 armed robberies, despite lax gun laws. By 1981, that number rose to 1,400, and by 1991, it hit 1,600, despite stricter gun laws. By 2011, urban mining reports in London, Manchester, and other cities, looters equivalent to setting fires, being pacified, and hurling gasoline bombs at police. Even medical staff face abuse. Patients died from unconsciousness, insulted those who saved them. The National Health Service has a post sign warning against such behavior. This was no mere coincidence. It was a cultural shift driven by a vision that de-emphasized accountability and glorified freedom. What was this vision? At its core, it held that unequal outcomes, whether wealth, crime, or family structure, stem from adverse treatment of the less fortunate. It assumed that more wealth is more spending, and less judgment will fix these disparities. It sounded compassionate, but it was a hypothesis, not a fact. And hypotheses must be tested, not ordered. The 1960s saw this vision triumph politically and socially. Welfare programs expanded under the banner of fighting poverty. Policing and punishment will be emphasized in favor of understanding and multiculturalism and rapid fair share replaced merit and accountability. The language of responsibility gave way to passive voice. Criminals didn't stab their victims. The night plan. Even Broadway caught the lead, with West Side Story characters proclaiming, "I am afraid," on account of mind and blood. Intellectual critics were eligible, with the message the same, blame society, not the individual. The results? Disaster. The welfare state didn't eradicate poverty. It entrenched dependency. The black poverty rate fell dramatically, 87% 1940 to 47% 1960, before the Great Welfare Expansion of the Johnson administration. After those programs took hold, decline slowed to a fall. Social pathology, once receding, surged. In Europe, the better used by nature. Violence to the U-turn in the 1960s, with homicide rates climbing back to levels unseen in a century. The very policy meant to uplift society undermined. The myth of deprivation is the irony. The 1960s vision assumed that deprivation caused social pathology. Yet, the first half of the 20th century, when material deprivation was far worse, we saw less crime, fewer broken families, stronger social bonds. In 1945, a crowd of 300,000 gathered in London to celebrate the end of the war in Europe. As economist J. K. Gallagher noted, it was most orderly. In 1953, British soccer players applauded an opponent who snatched victory at the last second. Such sportsmanship was standard. By the 1960s, it was gone, replaced by vulgar insults. Even in cricket, the epitome of gentlemanly sport, the data debunked the deprivation myth. If poverty caused crime, why did crime rise as material conditions? If discrimination was the sole driver of disparity, why did black poverty plummet before the welfare state expansion? The answer lies in incentive control, not material want. Welfare policies rewarded dependency and excused irresponsibility. The non-judgmental ethos of the 1960s eroded the moral framework that once constrained structured behavior. The result was not progress, but regression, a decivilizing trend that swept both sides of the Atlantic. The political triumph of a flawed vision. In a democracy, no welfare state can exist without a vision to justify it. The 1960s vision won because it appealed to emotion, compassion for the downtrodden, outrage and injustice. But emotion is not fact. The vision advocates ignored evidence that contradicted their assumptions. When Shelby Steele, a skeptic of the 1960s crusade, prior to 2011, America's educational system was the ladder of opportunity became a quagmire of declining standards. Employers will mention workers who couldn't write a coherent sentence or show up on time. The vision promised fairness. It delivered dysfunction. Consider education. The 1960s saw increased spending in racial immigration and achieved academic success. Yet, test scores fell, and employers reported a lack of basic skills. Integration, while morally necessary, didn't yield the academic gains promised. Why? Because the vision ignored deep learning, family structures, cultural values, and personal responsibility. Throwing money at schools is substitute because town doesn't teach a child to study home flexibility. Because of ignoring evidence, the 1960s vision wasn't just wrong, it was costly. It reversed decades of progress in pride, family stability, and education. It fostered a culture of entitlement and freedom that lingers today. And it did so under the banner of compassion, making its failures harder to fight. Who wants to argue against helping the poor? But the real question isn't whether we should help, it's whether our help actually the evidence is unethical. Welfare policies that incentivize dependency harm more than they help. Non-judgmental attitudes that excuse bad behavior before us. And visions that assume disparity and injustice blind us to the complex reality of human outcomes. The 1960s taught us that good things, unchecked. So, where do we go from here? First step is to stop romanticizing the 1960s. The errors of the same society. They fractured it. The second step is to demand that policies be judged by their results, not their rhetoric. If a program increases fatherlessness, crime, or ignorance, it's not compassionate, it's structural. And the third step is to rebuild the cultural foundation that once sustained us. Family, responsibility, and accountability. The tragedy of the 1960s isn't that we tried to help the disadvantaged, it's that we did so with blind faith in a vision that ignored human. The welfare state didn't lift people up, it trapped them in dependency. The non-judgmental ethos didn't liberate, it unleashed chaos. And the obsession with equal outcomes didn't create